Welcome to From the Resort podcast. This is episode 4. Today is Thursday, the 22nd of October 2020. I'm here in town in the beautiful Queenstown, and it is a lovely day. And my guest today is Alastair Holland from Berry & Co Solicitors. He's a partner of the firm, and they're a general practice of basically providing all legal services for, the Otago area. Thanks very much for coming along, Alastair.
Thank you, Tim. Great to be here.
And thanks for being one of the early guests on the podcast, so we can get the podcast out there in the general district. Alastair, I guess where we like to start the podcast is finding a bit about where your background is from. So early life, whereabouts were you born?
I was born in Auckland, and my parents and I lived there for 3 years before they relocated to Palmerston North. And I grew up in Palmerston North until I went away to university at 17 or 18, whatever it was.
Okay, so tell about those early years in Auckland. What was it like actually growing up? Was it a good neighbourhood, tough? What can you remember?
Well, I was only 3 when I left, so
very young. Okay, so you went to Palmerston North around about that sort of age?
Yep.
And how long were you there for?
Until I was about 18.
So you would have seen 15 years maybe at Palmerston North. Your us about growing up in Palmerston North, what that was like for you, what stories you may have had, and what do you believe, what's your, I guess, interpretation of the reputation of Palmerston North?
I love growing up in Palmerston North. It's a great city for young families. It was certainly very good to me and mine. I went to Palmerston North Boys High School, which is a traditional single-sex boys' school, been around for 100 and something years, and really loved my time there and set us up well for going away to sort of further my study at a tertiary level in the University of Otago in Dunedin.
Okay, so brothers and sisters, do you have, how many brothers and sisters?
2 younger brothers. Yes.
So you're the oldest like me?
Yeah, correct.
The eldest of 3, so we're very similar there. What was, I guess, can you remember growing up in your teen years, what do you think, can you remember what your first job was that you had? Part-time job?
My first summer out of school, school finished on the Friday. I went back on the Monday and started as in the groundskeeping team.
Okay.
And very much enjoyed that. It was just a great little way to fill my summers, because it allowed me to, and I did it for a couple of years when I was first at university. Allowed me to go back and play for my cricket club and that sort of stuff. The working hours allowed me to get to training and do all of that. So, suited me really well. And then, what else did I do? I did you do odds and sods during the shorter university holidays. I did a little work for my uncle's company. They I'm probably oversimplifying, but they do a lot of work on the UFB fast broadband network, putting the fibre and stuff. So a bit of outside work, which I sometimes miss when you're in an office. And from there I got my first job in a law firm in 2007, which was a clerkship at a firm called Mackenzie Elvin in Tauranga.
Yeah, okay. So what about, I think did you mention cricket there?
Yep.
Was that one of the sports that you obviously played growing up? What did you think of cricket, and was there any other sports that you sort of took a really good liking to?
Yeah, well, I played cricket since I was 5, and still do, though not at the level that I used to. But there's a great club competition here in Queenstown on the Friday nights for 2020, and I still do that. Play as much golf as I can, which I really enjoy. And since moving to Queenstown, sort of get out hunting and fishing as much as I can as well, which is sort of something that's a bit unique about being down here. You get much less opportunity to do that sort of stuff in the big city.
Excellent. So I guess, how old were you when you first started getting into golf? Was that fairly young age?
I think my grandfather got me a set of clubs when I was about 8, and I just sort of played bits and pieces as a young fella, but then once I started working in Auckland, started playing an awful lot more because it was sort of part of the corporate scene and bits and pieces like that, and you need to be able to do it to a certain level if you're going to go and play in front of clients. So
when I first spoke to you, I sort of picked up that you do like your golf to as much as obviously get out there and play. If you look all around New Zealand, what do you think is your favourite course that you've played at?
Well, look, Jack's Point's spectacular on its day. The wind gets up, but it's beautiful every time you play it and very reliable. My other two favourites that I think I'd mention would be Muriwai in Auckland, out on the west coast. I was a member there when I lived in Auckland, and we loved playing out there on Saturday mornings. And Titirangi, I think, spectacular also.
Excellent. A lot of beautiful golf courses in this area, as people could be aware of. There's plenty of good choices around this Queenstown. We are sort of sport for choice, really. Aside from that, I guess hunting and fishing, is that something you've always been into as well, or is that something that's sort of more developed in recent years? Or
definitely more recent for me. I never did it growing up or anything, but a lot of my friends in town are into it, and I've sort of tried to learn with them, and it's great excuse to get out in the bush and turn your phone off primarily. It doesn't matter if you're getting animals or fish to me so much, but it's being out there in the bush and seeing a new place, and it's great. So
as far as destinations here on the South Island of New Zealand, where are the best places to fish, do you reckon?
There's plenty on offer in the Otago region. The fishing in northern Southland is great. Just sort of, south of Kingston and around Garston, and there's your sport for choice, like you say. If all else fails, if it's not the season, there's the lakes, and the bigger rivers that you can go trawling in and often have some success. So it's no shortage. And
what about hunting? Is there places on the South Island that you can that you've been hunting and sort of, I guess, not too far from here? Are there places you can hunt and you obviously find that enjoyable? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it depends what species you're after, of course. But
what do you sort of usually look? I mean, what are you sort of targeting? I guess if you're out there.
Yeah, I've been deer hunting a few times, and I've been tar hunting once or twice. The tar hunting's up towards the Mackenzie country, Southern Alps for me mostly. People do it on the west coast, but I've never been there. And deer hunting, there's lots around, lots of public land, and in Fiordland in particular, there's ballot blocks down there for the Wapiti. Did that a couple of years ago, which was challenge. But no, it's great to get out there whenever you can.
So let's talk a bit about careers. I guess how old were you when you decided that you wanted to be in, I guess, in the solicitor, work, legal work, and what drew you to that?
Well, I guess you could say it starts at university, and I chose law and an arts degree as well in classics, because that's what my skill sets were suited to, rather than sort of knowing that you wanted to be a lawyer since when you were 5. And through university, I got exposed to the graduate program at Balgully, and that's where I sort of started in earnest, if you like, and just really progressed from there. Figured out that I was suited to it and that I was capable of it, and here we are. Well, what are we, 10 years later, 12 years later, something like that. Yeah. So
you mentioned some areas of specialisation. I guess since tell us a bit about the things that you consider yourself an expert in, specialisations, and I guess where that's sort of going to currently.
So I was at Balgully for about 7 years in the banking and financial services team, and so obviously at the larger firms you do specialise, and so I did that for, I guess, quite a while in the scheme of things. People often go overseas sort of part way through that sort of time period and go and continue that specialty and I guess further it, perhaps in Sydney or London or New York or Hong Kong or something. I didn't do that. I guess stayed on for quite a while at Bell Gully and then moved down here. Was, I guess, my first, my only move so far.
So how long have you sort of been in the Queenstown area and been part of Berry & Co. Solicitors?
It'll be 5 years in March. Yeah, so...
so coming up to 5 years, okay, yep.
And then in terms of when you make a move from a large commercial firm to a regional one, a regional centre like Queenstown, you sort of don't get you get less scope to specialise in a particular narrow field, and you need to become a generalist, and that's, it's our firm's focus, and secondly what I've been developing over the last few years since I've lived here in Queenstown, and you get exposure to a wide range of work and lots of different sorts of challenges and legal issues to deal with, which at first, can be daunting, but the longer you do it, the more accustomed to it you get. And so that's what we do at the moment. So I in my current practice, I steer more towards as much commercial work as I can, and I use that term broadly. And obviously, being in Queenstown, property is a big thing, and it's part and parcel of the commercial world that there's property deals involved as well. So so we do a wide range of work right through to, from, if you like, mum and dad sort of residential investments and sales and purchases and all the rest of it, through to more general commercial and commercial property work.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So I'm just trying to think where I'll go next. Where I guess who's had the biggest influences in your career? Like, who has there been any mentors out there that have sort of stuck out but you've learnt quite a lot from and I guess helped you quite a bit with your career so far?
Yeah, look, I'm fortunate to have a lot of my friends' parents are in the law, and through going to university and meeting them, and they've always been very open and helpful about decisions when you thinking about a career move and those sorts of things. Obviously, the partners that I've worked with in the firms that I've been in have all been mentors to me, and it's sort of it's not like you sort of pick one particular horse in that respect. You're mentored by a lot of what you see and a lot of what goes on around you. So I guess that's my answer there. Yeah.
I guess what sort of advice would you have for somebody sort of who was in your shoes back in 2006, 2007, obviously young when it comes to their legal career? What sort of advice would you give them about where law is today and how they should go about their career? Any sort of advice that you sort of, I guess, could pass on to someone like that?
Look, I think you've got to work hard at university. If your academic transcript and your CV can look up to scratch when you're going for your first job's probably often your hardest one to get. Probably not unique to the legal industry either. And if you can do that, you set yourself a good foundation. Then in terms of sort of getting your first job, any experience you can get anywhere, whether you're being a clerk or being involved in somebody's business, that first job is often through, well, it certainly wasn't my case, somebody it was my flatmate's parents were kind enough to employ me for a summer, and I'm forever grateful for that, because they sort of give you a decent shot at progressing on to a job that you start in earnest once you've finished university. Yeah.
Okay, so now, what obviously, just to I guess put the listeners into perspective, you are on the board for the Queenstown Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
I mean, I've been to a few events over the years with the chamber before actually moving to Queenstown. It seems like a very well-run chamber. What sort of prompted you to want to, I guess, not so much even be involved in the chamber as being a member, because that's pretty much when you go to a town like this, it makes sense to be part of the chamber board if you can for a lot of people. But what about the actual joining the chamber board? What was the rationale behind, I guess, joining the board, and I guess what sort of things made you learnt or influence of being on a board like the Chamber of Commerce?
I guess the main driver for me wanting to join the chamber was to, as a board member, provide a voice that was perhaps the voice of somebody who was relatively new to town, and relatively new to the world of being a business owner. There's a lot of people in Queenstown here who are very well established and have been for a very long time, and that's great to have that sort of depth of experience in the business world. I just felt that I could bring a perspective that was that of somebody in their early 30s who hasn't been here forever, because I think sometimes it's important to hear
what experiences that you may have had.
Yeah, absolutely, because they differ drastically from the experiences of the people who perhaps moved here 20, 30 years ago.
So prior to coming to, I know you're probably quite a bit younger, but prior to coming to Queenstown, were you sort of involved in any other sort of chambers?
No, I wasn't in Auckland. No.
Yeah.
No, it's been a new thing for me since I've moved here.
Yeah, but certainly it's a great idea. It makes sense, and I'm sure that any sort of perspective that gets added to the board and is only going to improve the way things run, hopefully.
Yeah. It's good to have a mix of people and experiences and industries and those sorts of things, because then when you're discussing things as a group, you get you get a bunch of different perspectives rather than perspectives that sort of seem to be already aligned.
So I guess making the move from working in Auckland to here, obviously the biggest difference is the population size is a lot smaller here, even though we see quite a lot of, or you would have seen quite a lot of transient population with tourists coming in and out. But do you consider that, is Queenstown to you, is it a small town? Like, does everyone know everybody after 5 years being here, like where you are at the moment?
I think it was probably perceived that way once, but that's not my perception now, not at all. No. No, I mean, I think Queenstown's taking its place in New Zealand as one of the major centres, despite the fact that we don't have a large permanent resident population in the scheme of other places. But if you go on Air New Zealand and you click, I want to fly from here to there, the first four places that come up are Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch and Queenstown.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the airport, as we know, it's one of the biggest ones outside of Auckland.
Yeah.
In New Zealand. So, and obviously, it's a tour. Historically, it's had a lot of growth. With the tourism.
Yeah.
Over many years.
And over many years, that brings with it an expanding population of permanent residents.
Yes. Yeah.
Of which I'm an example, and there will be many more after me to come. Hopefully.
Thousands. Yeah.
Yep.
Thousands and thousands of, I would guess, newer people coming to the area.
Absolutely.
I guess let's talk about the area then. So, what actually drew you to actually make the bold move to go from Auckland to Queenstown? What was it about Queenstown that I guess attracted your attention? And did you think that what were the factors, I guess, in that move that I guess were important at the time, and what are they still important to, today?
Well, I think primarily my partner Eva and I agreed that we both liked it, and that was very important to both of us. Secondly, we were both confident that we would be able to find jobs here that suited us, and we've been lucky enough to be able to be in that position since we've moved. We got our jobs first, and then we found somewhere to live. We didn't move down here without a job. Yeah. And arguably it was more straightforward getting a job than it was to try and find a house to rent long term. That was at that time. That's different. Yeah. Very different now.
Yeah. And obviously since you sort of came here, you would have seen that the property prices have more than doubled in the last 5 years.
Look, I don't know what the exact figures are, but they've certainly gone up. Yep.
Yeah, so quite Absolutely. A lot. So as far as house affordability, it's very difficult. Living expenses is something that people talk about, that you hear around the traps, that you need to make sure you're earning money in order to be able to live here. I guess so. Those are certainly the factors. What is there anything else? I guess is a factor that you need to be aware of if you're living in a place like Queenstown. I mean, what's something that's I guess been important for you?
Yeah, look, I mean the first thing you got to do is find yourself somewhere to live. There's no doubt about it. The property is expensive. The rental market, I think, post-COVID must have improved, for a prospective tenant, on the basis that there was such a huge proportion of the available properties or investment properties in Queenstown that were used for short-term rental accommodation, your Airbnbs and your book a batch and your like. And when the tourism industry, domestic, international and otherwise, takes a hit, it makes a few more of those properties available to let to people on a long-term basis. So as hard as that is for the people that own those properties, I'd like to think there's a pool of people out there who can go and get themselves a long-term rental, which a lot easier than they might have been able to do when we were in the middle of a property boom and a short-term accommodation tourism sort of boom. Yeah. So that's a sort of just what was the question there?
No, I guess what's sort of important to, I guess, that you found that's been important living here that you've had to sort of adapt to, that's for your lifestyle, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So, yes. So once you've got somewhere to live and you've got a job, then you can go and enjoy it for all the wonderful things that it offers, with the ski fields and the golf course and the outdoors and all the rest of it. Yep.
Yeah, no, I guess the tourism that sort of has been here for the last 5 years, up until the last 6 months in particular, it's obviously good for Queenstown whilst you've got the economy, that type of economy and that sort of thing. Do you sort of enjoy Queenstown as being a busy place, or do you sort of enjoy it sort of a bit more, I guess, what it's like at the moment with I guess a little bit less in the way of tourists being here?
I reckon it's great to see it busy. It's. Even now, but if we talk pre-COVID, vibrant, thriving place, things changing all the time, and new things popping up, and people coming down and having a crack at something. It's great to be in a sort of dynamic environment. I don't think we've lost any of that because of COVID. What we've lost is obviously the tourism piece to some extent. That'll come back one day when the world sorts itself out. And although it's tough for people in many sectors, if people can find a way to hang on, the world's pretty cyclical and things will come right one day.
Yeah, so I guess for your business at the moment and being I guess a legal brain in the town, a solicitor, a barrister, there's plenty of things going on, plenty of projects, activities that keeping you busy the last 6 months.
Yeah, well, our industry, we're very fortunate that we have work to do in good times and bad as far as the economy is concerned. Our workflows change, to the extent you see to some extent you see a drop off in volumes of say conveyancing transactions, but there'll be an uptake of workflow in some other area, and that's sort of how law firms balance themselves out with a skill set so that they can survive and thrive in many sorts of economic climates. Yeah.
Interesting. So I guess with the way, I've had a few solicitors on podcasts in the past before in Brisbane, so I've sort of spoken to a few different ones, estate planning, lawyers, and a few other different types, people that are in law, commercial law, etc. I guess one thing that sort of often comes up in is I guess the way solicitors charge at the in 2020. Historically, when I first sort of came into the business world, most solicitors would be you'd get a bill based on the amount of hours that they would charge on the work plus an admin component, and you'd have a price, and then you'd just have to pay with that. And sometimes it could be quite high, or depending on how much time they actually spent on the job. And then I guess the last 5 or so years we're seeing more of this fixed fee type arrangements where, okay, that's the service, that's how much you're going to pay for that service. It's a fixed fee sort of arrangement. If we need to come back and do extra work, we'll charge you for this extra fee. What do you think about the way solicitors charge in 2020, and has there been much change, I guess, that you've had seen in your time here in New Zealand?
To answer your second point, I don't think there's been much change. I think your summary of your experiences reflects what I do in my practice and I think what people do in the market generally. With the fixed fee stuff, it's great to be able to provide those services. There are some legal jobs that are able to be performed within those sort of parameters.
Yeah, definitely.
Accurately estimated. And there are some jobs that are not.
Yeah.
And so
a lot of litigation jobs, not so much. They're more on the...
Yeah, quite right.
Definitely.
Litigation's a good example. So where it's appropriate, where people ask for fee estimates, absolutely happy to provide them. I'd much rather provide somebody with a fee estimate that was accurate than one that was a lowball to try and buy the job and then go, oh, yeah, but by the way, hang on, there's this, that and the other.
Yeah.
So, if I'm giving estimates, I like to make them...
Obviously you want to make sure there's...
a reasonable estimate of what it's actually going to cost, because otherwise...
You don't want to sort yourself short from the...
Otherwise it's like taking a car to the mechanic, right? He says,
do it for this, but
that'll be $300, then you get it all for $800 and you're disgusted with it. But had he told you it was going to be $800 to begin with, you wouldn't have blinked.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So just like the conversation we sort of have, and you get obviously we've no lawyers that have fixed model pricing, but that the area of specialization can be done that way, where it's like an estate planning solution, which is very much should be in a fixed price parameter for a lot of that.
Yeah, I can't really comment on estate planning, so I don't do much for myself.
Yeah, and then other things like conveyancing a fixed fee, or within, depending on the different levels of conveyancing, there might be a couple of different levels. But yeah, so it's quite interesting that I guess with that.
What it's great to do is, one thing I've learned is people don't like talking about money.
No.
Right? So if you talk about the money right at the start, then the job can go through to its end and no surprises, right? Whereas if you don't, or you delay the conversation, or you think, oh, he or she might be a bit sensitive, so I'll just deal with it later. I reckon that inevitably leads to problems. So
definitely.
As uncomfortable as it may be, talk about the money at the start, and if that's not going to work for the person, then either find something that's going to, or don't.
Yeah, I'm coming from an accounting background. Obviously, we deal with fees and how we charge the clients. We don't, and I guess just because it's a cyclical process in the way you do that type of job. So if the client gets charged $2,000 one year, their expectation will probably be that if they were happy with the job and they paid $2,000 one year, they're going to expect that the next fee is going to probably be not too much different. It could, 5-10% of the time that it might be cheaper, 50% of the time it might be slightly more, or the other it might be the same. So it depends on all the different factors of their business, but don't usually have too many. I mean, I guess we're pretty lucky that there's a cyclical approach. If you do have sort of disputes with fees, it's very few and far between. Even if you don't sort of get into the habit of quoting how much the price is going to be up front. So it's still a fixed price. Yes, you've got to work out how productive you are, and the price is, obviously what you come to at the end, you will do something. So it's quite interesting. So that's good. That's a good little bit of conversation there.
Open communication is the key.
Yeah, open communication. You want to be able to meet the client's needs in whatever you're doing, and I'm sure that from what I'm getting from what you do, I think that's a very important part, is meeting the client's expectations, and that's very high on the list.
Well, we're a service industry, really.
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. Other hobbies. I mean, we've gone through quite a few hobbies: of hunting, fishing, golf. Anything else that you like to do in, I guess, this Otago region as far as a hobby? Like, do you ever go out to Cromwell, to the motorsport place, or?
I must admit, I've not been there. I do some skiing.
Yep, skiing, of course.
I think what I'd like to do is just some more time to do the things that I've already mentioned. But that's the hardest thing to come by, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess weekends. I mean, at the moment, do you work on weekends, or do you have the weekends free to yourself to be able to do what you, I guess, want to do?
I try and steer away from working on the weekend. I mean, there's always those things that have to be done, but that's certainly the exception rather than the rule down here. Yeah.
And things like, I mean, there's always, in New Zealand, I always see there's a huge following of rugby union. Everyone loves the All Blacks. Do you like the rugby union and the All Blacks as well? Is that something you support?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, full on. Yep. I love it when they play games down in Dunedin, because that's just a short drive for us. It's sort of 3 hours over there.
So you've been to an All Blacks game at Dunedin?
Yeah, in the last few years. I obviously didn't play one there this year,
No.
But yeah, I think I've been over every year that they've had a game there. Yeah.
Because you said you did your uni there, didn't you?
Yes.
At Dunedin.
So
how many years there? About 4 years at uni, or
5?
5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only been sort of through Dunedin actually once. It's a nice place. What is your sort of, being those uni years in the university town that it is, what do you think of sort of Dunedin these days? Is there sort of an opinion? Do you think it's a nice place to go to get away from Queenstown, or what is your sort of feeling towards going over to Dunedin if you have to, going over there for either work, business,
Yeah, well, look, since you raised it, well, yeah, we do go there for the odd weekend away just to get out of town, something different. There's some shops over there that aren't over here, and we're a long way from the sea. It's nice to see the sea occasionally. Yeah. So we enjoyed it. No.
Yes, okay. I guess, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up on the podcast today? It's been a pleasure to sort of listen to, I guess, your insights into lots of different things about the area, about being in the legal profession. I guess, and obviously being part of the Chamber Board. Is there sort of anything else that you, I guess, wanted to bring up today, to tell the listeners, or any sort of random thoughts on the way things are going generally? Yeah,
look, I mean, it's unavoidable to see that Queenstown faces its challenges as a result of COVID. That being said, I think it's coping pretty well, all things considered. And I think, if I look at the time since I've moved here, it's only becoming a better place to sort of live and have a career. And if anyone's considering it, I think it's certainly a worthwhile option considering. Look, it's growing. I think the growth is largely a good thing, though that you need to do those things in a managed fashion and sustainably and all those sorts of things. But just the mere prospect that something's slightly bigger today than it was yesterday, it's not a bad thing to start with.
I think finally, as far as the future, and we found out this year, the future is very, very hard to predict. As far as where things are, and a good example is, yes, I'd planned to come here for quite a while, but obviously COVID throws a spanner in the works, and my wife in particular we didn't get to Queenstown as early as we would have liked, or she would have liked. In particular, so that can certainly throw a spanner into your plans. But as far as your future goals and plans, is there anything that you want to achieve, I guess, in the next 5-10 years? Anything that you sort of, you don't have to actually say it, I guess, but do you know exactly what you're wanting to achieve, I guess, in the next 5 to 10 years? Any goals that you're sort of setting that you're wanting to say, yep, I'll tick that off my sort of to-do list?
Yeah, it's probably some things that you never... Remind me of the question, please.
So just as far as...
goals and what I'm looking to achieve being here. Yeah. So, it's not like I treat my life like a list, it sort of changes and evolves, and if I'm lucky enough to be able to set myself up and continue to live here, and, one day if I'm lucky, perhaps raise a family and those sorts of things, and have your children grow up here, I think it'd be a great place to raise kids, and to carry on with my career, and also with for my partner to carry on with hers. So if we can do that, we'll be very fortunate.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it, Alastair. It's been great. Hopefully you'll edit it and we'll get this up over the next day or two.
That'll be good.
Share it with you and get it up on all the different channels. Can't wait to sort of catch up with the other members of the board of the Chamber of Commerce as well, to be able to hear their stories. So I do look forward to that, and look forward to getting more, I guess, people in the area on the podcast, and everyone, be able to sort of, everyone will sort of know what's sort of going on, I guess, as far as people's stories, and it's something different for people to listen to when it comes to Queenstown. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure to be a part of it. Cheers.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Tick off, right? But I mean, my main focus is on setting up here and
building the business up,
living my life here and building the business up, and